Good morning and welcome to our quarterly E-rate webinar. This is Curtis Rogers. I'm Communications Director here at the South Carolina State Library. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to look at the audience view and just make sure that you can see what I'm seeing. So we will go ahead and make sure that the screen is showing up for you, and you all should be seeing the South Carolina State Library's website. As we're getting started, you do have a little questions box over on the right-hand side, and if you are able to hear me okay, if you could just type in the questions box that you can hear me loud and clear, I would appreciate that. Just lets us know that everyone who has logged in can hear us okay. So if you have, okay, good. I see Monty saying you can hear us all right. So we will go ahead and continue. Again, this is our quarterly E-rate webinar, and here at the South Carolina State Library's website, if you want to learn about more events, you can just click on our events tab, and this has everything listed right here. Also, if you're interested in subscribing to our newsletters, you can certainly click on subscribe and sign up for our newsletters announcements. We also have the South Carolina Virtual Library, which is Discus, and that's Discus updates and training opportunities. You're more than welcome to sign up and learn more about what we do here at the State Library. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andrew Epting. He is going to be doing the presentation today, and we'll just get that started right here. And there we go. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you, Curtis. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Got a lot to cover in a short amount of period of time, but we'll do our best. I will get through the presentation, and then we will try to open it up for questions at the very end. If you do have questions, that you might forget, feel free to throw them there in the chat box, and we'll address them, throughout the presentation. One thing to mention is you also should have handouts. Four handouts that are in this the GoToWebinar tool pane. You'll have the presentation, a pin request template, and a sample worksheet, as well as a worksheet certification form, and we'll go through those here in just a few moments. Okay, let's see. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about the invoicing process. And so you guys, many of you folks who have been on this call, on this webinar before, have seen, or to our trainings, have seen this this timeline, if you will, in the past. And generally, I have the first three in bold-face type. But as you can see now, we've got the latter two, commitment and invoicing. And so we'll dive into these and break them apart. So let's go ahead and, yeah, we don't need to do this. So for the most part, most folks are in this phase right now. Your applications have already been submitted and you're waiting on commitments, or you actually might be past that already and are in that invoicing phase. So let's go ahead and remind ourselves what we've got to do. So if you've been in our trainings, you've also seen this slide where we talk about kind of like the shopping list, step-by-step instructions of what you need to do to get from the planning phase to filing your Form 471. Well, we're obviously past that. And so for today's webinar, I wanted to kind of update this and provide a new slide, one that will talk about the FCDL to invoicing. Step one, if you're following along here, is respond to PIA. PIA is Program Integrity Review. Many of you folks will not likely have received PIA. I do receive, anytime an applicant, a school or a library receives an inquiry or a question from a reviewer, I generally get copied on those emails. But for the most part, some applications, simple applications for products or very simple services, can go right on through the review process without actually needing any type of inquiries. And so for other lucky folks like myself, we have to respond to many rounds of PIA, program integrity review, and the purpose of PIA is to clarify what you put on your application, right? They're looking at it, they want to fund it, but they just need to clear up some stuff before they do so. This is also an opportunity to make some changes. And so this is something that you'll want to make sure that you take seriously and respond to the PA reviewers in a timely fashion. The second step here is, you'll look for that FCDL, Funding Commitment Decision Letter. It says it's a letter, but it's actually an email, which is, I think, is kind of funny. This will come to you guys via email. It's essentially USAC, the E-rate program management company, saying, "Yep, what's in your application looks good. Our decision is we're gonna commit to funding it." And so that's essentially what that letter email will say. Third, you'll want to coordinate installation or purchasing your services with your vendors and pay for those products and services based on the bear format of invoicing or the SPI method of invoicing. And we'll break those two apart. Specifically, we'll focus on the bear invoicing process today. Fourth, you'll want to make sure your Form 486 is filed. That Form 486 is required. It does two things. It confirms once again your SIPA certification. SIPA is Child Internet Protection Act certification, and is required for all applicants, schools, and libraries to maintain in order to receive funding from the E-rate program. And the second thing the Form 486 does is it actually allows applicants to update or change the service start date. My recommendation for most folks is to not change that service start date. To most folks listed as 7/1 July 1st of a particular funding year. It's always, unless under extreme circumstances, it's always a good idea to keep that Form 486 date matching up with what's on your application. It just allows for a more speedy review process. Like I said, there are certain circumstances where changing that service start date is in some cases required or beneficial, but for the most part, no. And then last two steps are filing bears and making sure that USAC has the correct banking information for your organization. So if you're filing a bear for the first time, if you're a new applicant, new school, for example, new library, or you'll want to make sure you file that Form 498. That Form 498 is going to be the form that you provide to USAC with all of your organization's financial information. Banking information, bank routing information. They'll also want you to upload a voided check. There are other options for some applicants. A voided check is hard to come by, so there are other options that an organization can provide to satisfy that requirement. And then lastly, number 6, file that bear. And so with that, let's go ahead and break some of these apart. Okay. All right, let's see. There we go. Focusing on the Form 472, which is also called the BEAR, things to remember. The BEAR is the Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement, and it is one of the 2 invoicing methods the applicants can use. Under the BEAR method, an applicant pays 100% of the project cost, then seeks reimbursement from USAC. And the other methodology, SPI, we'll highlight this, but the applicant only pays a discounted invoice. So the real key thing to remember on a BEAR is that an applicant pays 100% of the project cost and then is going to, after that, seek reimbursement from USAC. First-time applicants will need to provide USAC with financial information by filing a Form 498. I mentioned that earlier. That's that banking document that you'll need to file. The other thing to note, the other thing to remember there is if your banking information changes for whatever reason, you'll want to go in and update that Form 498, and you can actually do that now in Epic. It is important to remember that BEARs are filed in a legacy filing system, not an Epic EPC. EPC is the E-rate Productivity Center where most of the forms are filed for the E-rate program. But remember, BEARs are filed in a legacy filing system, not Epic, and applicants will need to get what is known as a BEAR PIN number, and we'll talk about that in a second. And the last real thing to remember is your filing deadline. So if you are dealing with a recurring service, for example, most of you folks don't deal with recurring services like internet service or your wide area network Ethernet, connectivity services. The consortium takes care of those costs for you, but you guys might have a recurring invoice for a recurring service for managed broadband internet services. So one of the three category 2 subtypes. That is going to be a monthly recurring cost, and the invoice to the deadline to file a BEAR is 120 days after June 30th of a particular funding year. So that means for the 1920 funding year, the funding year that we're currently in, we've just started, you'll want to make sure that you file your BEAR no later than about October 28th, 2020. For non-recurring services, and I've got it abbreviated there by NR, the service delivery deadline is September 30th about September 30th of a funding year. And so you'll have 120 days after that point to file a BEAR for that non-recurring service. So a non-recurring service example would be one-time installation of access points in your school or library, or you purchase a new firewall and it's installed. That's a non-recurring expense, and you have until September 30th of 2020 to get that product service installed, up and running, and then you have 120 days after that to file the BEAR to USAC. Okay, all right. Switching gears, we'll talk about the SPI method here right now. The for a SPI is service provider invoicing, and this is the other invoicing method that applicants can use. I will say that in South Carolina, it really kind of depends on what kind of organization you are. If you're a school district or a library or charter school, most applicants prefer to file through the SPI method, but we do see a good number of folks who file through the BEAR method. It's your choice. You can make your own decision as it relates to how you go about filing these invoices, whether you want to file a BEAR or SPI. But the key thing to remember about the service provider invoicing, as the name suggests, is that the service provider is going to bear all the administrative burden of filing the reimbursement to USAC. So what the vendor is going to do, the service providers, they're going to submit to the applicant, you guys, a discounted invoice. Okay, so what that means is if the total project cost that we'll use it as an example is $10,000, right? The library system, for example, has a category 2 discount rate of 85%. The vendor will submit a discounted invoice to the library for $1,500 or 15% of that $10,000 total project cost. The vendor in this scenario would then take that invoice that's paid, and they then submit to USAC reimbursement for the remaining 85%. So the key thing to remember between the two is that under a BEAR invoicing system, the applicant pays 100% of the cost up front once the project's done, and then the applicant seeks the reimbursement from USAC. Under the service provider invoicing method, the vendor, the applicant's only going to pay a discounted portion, and that discount is directly related to the applicant's discount rate for category 2. And then the vendor will take care of filing the invoice to USAC. And so it's just like I said, there's no rhyme or reason as to why an organization would like to do one or the other. I will say that when you're dealing with a bear form, there's a lot more things involved. Obviously, the SPY invoicing method is a lot more easier for applicants. If there's a a cash flow issue, SPY method is obviously a better choice. The thing to keep in mind about the service provider invoicing is that you definitely want to make sure you review all of the invoices that you're paying, and ultimately that the ultimately that the vendor is submitting to USAC. Have heard a couple of horror stories where the vendor and for a particular school district submits one bill to an applicant, turns around and submits another invoice to USAC and falsifies information. That's been many years ago, and if like I said, that a lot of that kind of stuff can be avoided, where the applicants and service providers kind of work together to make sure that what is being submitted to either the vendor or to USAC is accurate. So just some things to remember there. If you are filing a SPY, if you're using the SPY method to pay invoices and you being an applicant and your vendor's taking care of everything else, you don't necessarily need to file a Form 498. You're not USAC's not going to be remitting a payment to your organization. They would be remitting it to the vendor. And so if you file the SPY method, you don't necessarily need to file a Form 498. It's always good to have one on file with USAC, just in case you would like to file a bear at some point in time in the future. But for the most part, if it's something you're not interested in doing, then you don't have to do that. I have here bear filing deadlines. They are technically SPY filing deadlines, and they're the same for vendors. Vendor would have 120 days after the service service delivery deadline to file those invoices to USAC. And but for applicants, once you receive the invoice from the vendor, you can pay it. So, all right. So, like I said, the bottom line to remember between the two is that the bear invoicing method a little more involved, but the applicant, the library, school district has a much more involved role when it comes to managing that process. When it's a SPY method, obviously a lot less administrative burden, but the applicant would want to make sure that they're reviewing the information that the vendor is submitting to USAC to make sure there is no waste, fraud, or abuse going on there. Okay, back to the Form 472. Here's a couple things you'll need to know. USAC does provide a really good training video on filing bears. It is, and I've got the link there that you guys can click and view later. It does talk about, and it breaks it down into really easy parts. And I would recommend anyone who is interested in filing bears take a look at it just to make sure they're understanding of what's going on. But here are a couple of things that you'll need when filing a Form 472 or bear. You'll need that bear PIN for the legacy filing system. I've got in the handouts that PIN request template, is a spreadsheet which you guys can download, complete, and you'll submit to Client Services Bureau. I think I actually discussed that in a slide here in a second, but we'll get through that in just a minute. Next, you'll need to make sure that you receive that Form 486 notification letter, have a certified Form 498, paid vendor invoice, and lastly, that bear worksheet. So let's go ahead and kind of break these apart and talk about each one. So the bear PIN, personal identification number for a legacy filing system, is required. You'll want to create that bear PIN template and submit it to CSB. And you can do that via Epic. So when you log into Epic, there is in that little link bank towards the top right hand of the file from your landing page, there's a contact us, and so you can upload that document directly in EPC, and you should have bear pins within about 2 weeks or really less. And if you ever need help escalating getting a bear pin number, please feel free to always shoot me an email, and I'm happy to help on your behalf. I do have a link to the USAC website where it talks about the bear pin. Curtis, let me see if I can I click on it? I'm just gonna look at it. Yeah. Uh-oh. Well, okay, That's not what I wanted to do. All right. Okay. Let's see. We just need to pick back up where we left off. I think it was right here. And then let's see. All right. Yep, I'll do that. The best laid plans of mice and men. All right. Okay. Right. So here you go, guys. And am I still showing the screen, Curtis? Okay. Perfect. All right. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna back this out a little bit. Let's see. And so this is the USAC website. If you go to usac.org and then click on the Schools and Libraries program, to get to this form, it's kind of cantankerous. You kind of have to go to Forms. You would then scroll down to, you would go to Tools, and then you scroll to the bottom. I think they still have it here. No, where did I see it? They used to have it down there. Forms. Oh, right up there. Yep, there it is. And then you go to that top section right there where it says personal PIN number. So here is some information about what they're looking for. It's very basic information, and you can just fill it in that spreadsheet. Here is the link to that template, which I said earlier you've got attached to your to the handout section. So let's pull this guy up, and we'll just see what it looks like real quick. Very simple. You just populate this information with your organization's information. If you don't know some of this information, feel free to give me a call. I will try to do as much as I can to help you out, but that's about all I can do. So, and if you have any questions, Client Services Bureau is pretty good at getting BIN numbers processed and turned around. So, all right. If you've got any questions about that BIN process, we can definitely talk about it at the end. So let's get back to our slide. We'll close that. Yep. All right. And then the next thing to be mindful of when you filing a bear is you'll want to have your bear pin before you file your bear, right? And you'll do that in the legacy filing system. And then let's go look at that real quick. So this is the website. I say legacy filing system because it is it's not an Epic. Some folks want to see invoicing move to Epic, others don't. It is the reason we say a legacy is because it predates EPC, which means, and there is one other system that USAC uses they call it a legacy system. It just means that it's been around for many years and they don't really do many updates to it. So this is what you're going to look at and see when you guys get logged in. When you go to this website, here you're going to be providing your organization's build entity number, that BIN number. You'll enter in your PIN number, the email for the person who that PIN number is associated with, and their last name. Hit login, and then it's a very very step-by-step process. And we won't go into a lot of details with that. Like I said, that video that I have linked in the PowerPoint presentation describes a lot of it. And I'll actually show you how to get there if you lose the link. So from the Schools and Libraries website here, you'll go over here to Trainings and Outreach. I go to Online Learning Library here at the top, middle, and then scroll on down. If you're not familiar with this section, this is actually really good. They've updated these videos recently, and they do have some pretty good content here. They used to be very clunky. Here you can see this is a 4 minute 39-second video on how to file the Form 472, that bear form, which I think is pretty good. So, okay, enough of that. Let's see. Let's go back to our presentation and then look at what's next. And I think I want to do that. I think, Chris, you hit that button right there. All right. Okay, what you'll need next is that Form 486 notification letter. What that means is, and again, it's not necessarily a letter, it's an email that's coming to you. After you file your Form 486, you should receive a Form 486 notification letter within about 24 to 48 hours. It essentially says, yep, we've gotten your Form 486, it looks good, everything is copacetic, and this letter is saying that we approve it, right? Most cases, this is an automated process. However, as I mentioned to everyone, when reviewing and completing and certifying that Form 486, make sure you look at all the terms and conditions and the check boxes that you're selecting, and making sure that you're selecting the right ones. I will tell you, I'm the first one where was moving too fast, select the wrong checkbox, and my my Form 486 wasn't approved until 3 to 4 months later. It was a very grueling process. And of course, you can't submit a bear until you've had this Form 486 notification letter that received. So it's very important to make sure that you review that Form 486 when you're certifying it and submitting it accurately. That's just going to make the whole process that much more simple. If you ever have a question about a checkbox, one of the terms and conditions on a Form 486, please feel free to email me anytime. I'm happy to get back to you. Second thing to note here is that you'll want to check for the Form 486 notification letter in Epic. And you can go see all of your notification letters by selecting the FCC Form 486 notification letter. That will be in the notification type drop-down box, which can be found in your landing page in Epic. So when you log into Epic, navigate to your landing page, and then top, one of the first sections you'll see in that EPC account is that notifications and then the notification type. And so you'll select the drop down, and there will be many various different notification letters, such as your Form 486 itself, Form 498, Form 471. Those types of things are all listed there, and you can sort those by funding year and see all the ones that you submitted. Okay. You'll also need, again, for folks who are going the route for bears, and also, specifically for the folks who are filing for E-rate Category 2 for the first time, new schools, folks who are just now participating in the program, getting that certified Form 498 is required before you can really submit that bear. So you can file the Form 498 in Epic. And it's not that intuitive. So to get to, and I don't have my login for our EPC account with me today, but when you log into Epic, you'll navigate to your landing page. In that top right hand corner of the screen, you'll have all of those I call it the link bank. It'll be links to to creating a Form 471, Form 486, Form 500, all that kind of stuff. Towards the bottom, there'll be a link that says Manage Organization. Click on that. Your organization will come up and it'll on a new web page, and then you'll just select the hyperlink where your organization is listed. From there, it takes you to another website. Like I said, it's not that intuitive. And it will say summary along the top hand row of the page. The very last option is an option called related actions. Click on that, and then the option to create a Form 498 is the 11th option down. So like I said, it's if you ever need help navigating Epic, feel free to give me a call, and I'm happy to help walk you through it. Client Services Bureau is also available to help with things such as that, just navigating around Epic. But the thing to remember when wanting to file a Form 498 is from your landing page, go to Manage Organization. Along that sub-taskbar will be many different options. You'll select the last one to the far right. It'll say related actions, and then select that one, and you can find all the stuff you need to take care of there. I've also included a link to the FCC Form 498 user guide for more information. If you ever have any questions about filing out Form 498, shoot me an email, give me a buzz. It's not that complicated. It's just you have to, make sure and each organization is going to be a little bit different based on their financial setup, whether they're part of a county, independent school, or a separate independent school district. So give that document a review, and it should be able to navigate you and orient you really nicely. But like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. Okay, let's see. The next to the last thing that you'll need is obviously to pay that invoice. So you'll want to go ahead and once the work has been done by the vendor, service provider, go ahead and pay that invoice. And then once you pay that invoice, that's really the last thing you need to do in order to file that bear. And so the reason I say, you want to have that paid invoice handy is because what you're going to do is you're going to use that paid invoice to really populate the information that's required in order to submit a bear, and you'll populate information into that legacy filing system. I'll show you an example of one that we do here in a moment. Thing to remember, you may submit bears in any frequency that you choose. Petra, who works in our office, who really handles a lot of our really all of our bears, we like to submit our bears on a monthly basis. Most folks might not need to do that. You guys can go file a bear once a quarter. You only need to do it once per year. If it's, for example, a non-recurring service, you can do it at any time once you've met all these other criteria. And the last thing to remember is that, and I don't think many folks know this unless you've filed a bear before, but you don't need to upload an invoice to submit a bear. Like I said, what you're doing is you're taking that paid invoice and you're just keying in the information that's on that invoice directly into that legacy filing system, and it's going to create a bear form for you. So let's see. Let me go and I'm going to show you guys what we're going to back up just real quick. I'm going to hit escape. We're going to do this. And so here is a couple of things. Well, I'll show you guys how our bears look, for example. Here is an example, and let's make sure everybody's seeing okay. Right. So this is an example of, that's not what I wanted. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second, guys. I wanted the other one. Here we go. So this is a sample. It's not a sample. This is actually a bear that our office has submitted. So and Petra, again, who I mentioned, works in our office and handles a lot of all these bears, copies and pastes directly out of the bear legacy filing system. So when you log in, you'll see here. Okay, here's a new bear form. You're gonna click on that button, and then you've got 3 blocks here. And I just want to make sure everybody can see this. Okay, it might be kind of hard to see, so I'm going to scroll in just a little bit. Okay, I think that should be a little bit better for you guys. Move over here, and then I can navigate that way a little better. So what you can see here is you have your build entity name, our entity number, and all the corresponding information that was associated with this bear. Total reimbursement amount is what should be on your FRN, funding request number. Like I said, you'll just be populating this information in there. You'll need the FCC Form 471 application number, the funding request number. Here's the bill frequency. Like I said, we select monthly. You can select monthly, quarterly, annually. There are a couple of different options, or you can submit it at any time where it's not. If it's a one-time charge, then it's one time. Customer bill date, the shipping date to customer, or last day of work performed. And so because our services are for internet connectivity, in this case, I believe this is the WAN services that we provide the state, there's not a specific date that the product was shipped to the customer or last date the work was performed, but this will be unique to you guys. Whatever applies in your certain circumstance, you would just enter that date there. The total undiscounted amount for the services would be the total amount on the bill. And so, for example, our total bill was $1.2 million. We have a discount rate of 79%, and then it should automatically calculate what the discount amount is going to be, which again is correct. Make sure that's all accurate there for 102 or 1.2. What is that? Yeah, $1.02 million there. Again, these are for statewide. This is our statewide application. These are big applications, obviously, and so we file bears with these. The second part, block. So that was block 1 up here. Block 2, and that's all contact information. Block 2 is the bear, the actual information regarding the invoice. And block 3 are all these certifications. So we skip a page, blank, and then you'll select checkboxes. Again, it's a bunch of checkboxes that say, okay, the information we're providing is accurate. You're not, no one's, providing you with additional funds to do this stuff. Just basic stuff that you would normally see on the general terms and conditions for anything related to Epic. So So that's an example of what you're looking like. And like I said, it's very simple. It's not, it's not very complicated as long as you have all your information kind of done ahead of time. It's in sequence and you got all the stuff kind of there handy. It's just a matter of keying in information. So you'll submit this bear. It'll show here in red text, this bear was successfully certified and submitted on, on this particular date and time. And what you will also get, the first document that I meant to I didn't mean to show was this one. You'll get an email from this email address, no reply at usac.org. Please whitelist that website, that email address, excuse me. And it will say, it'll give you an email confirmation that, yep, this form has been accepted, and I'll provide that information. Please note that this does not mean that the bear has been approved and that will be paid out. This is just saying that you have submitted it correctly. Okay, we'll talk about that stuff in here in just a second. So let me navigate. I think I can minimize this. I'm gonna keep that there, and then I'm gonna go back over here, and then we're gonna go back to the slides. Okay, well, actually, I think we have it right here. So without going to the full screen, this next tab here, the next slide, excuse me, is really the last thing that you'll need to complete. And this, again, nothing you'll need to submit. This is what you'll want to have on file just from a document retention perspective. So a bear worksheet. You'll want to complete at the time when you do your bear, file your bear, go ahead and complete this bear worksheet and keep it on file for future inquiries. And so let's go look at an example of what that document looks like. So let me go back over here. We're going to pull two of them real quick, okay? So here's the certification form, and here's sample worksheet. Okay, so the certification form is essentially as a cover sheet, saying that information here is accurate and is representative to what's on this worksheet. This is not, you do not have to submit this when you file your bear. You want to just go ahead and fill this out, complete it when you do your bear, and put it on top of your invoice, packet. In the event that someone ever shoots you an email and says, "Hi, Andrew, can you provide us with additional information regarding this invoice before we can pay it out?" They're going to ask for this worksheet certification, and they're also going to want to see something like this. This is that worksheet, sample worksheet. Again, this is something that USAC generated. You can format this however you like. You may have something that does this already, but as long as you have the key information that is listed here, this really all you need to keep. And again, you'll want to make sure you have something like this. You don't necessarily submit it at the time that you file the bear. You want to just keep this as an attachment, or really as a cover letter, if you will. I'll show you an example of how ours look in a second. Keep it on, with your invoice. So applicant name, service provider name, all this information is basic information you got to have. Just put it all in one easy to kind of navigate page. Okay. So let's check out the ones that we do. Here is documentation, and let me, I'm gonna have to rotate this a few times. Sorry guys, I know you're probably getting dizzy, I apologize. So here is a sample of that form, that bear worksheet. We have our Form 471 application information there. We have all of our FRN information and discount information here. This is what we use. You don't have to use something like this if you'd like to. We're more than happy to provide that as a sample for you guys. But you just have your key information listed here, such as your current charges, which are filed on the bill. How much? Well, you guys don't necessarily have many ineligible costs, but if you do have an ineligible cost, our primary ineligible costs are administrative fees. We have to take those out there. Excuse me. And so, like I said, it's pretty simple. By process, I sign off on all of them before they get submitted, and that's the way it works. Don't worry about this page. This is an administrative fee charge that we get from our vendor. And here, again, it's a sideways view. I will rotate it once because it'll get clockwise. That form that has been signed off, I fill it out, and we just add it to the packet. And here, of course, is an internal document we use to process payments. additional documentation that we use for the vendor here, and then obviously we go to our bill here. So that's just a sample of what we do, how we do it, at the E-Rate Consortium. You guys are welcome to copy this, use this in any regards that you like, or do your own thing. As long as the key information is there, you should be good to go. All right, so let's close out of this. We'll close all tabs. I think that's all the tabs that we'll need to work with today. And then let's finish out. I think we have just a few more slides. So what comes next? Most bears will complete in about 24 to 48 hours. So what that mean by when I say the word complete, you submit them, they are either automatically reviewed and they are completed, and that means that they're ready to go to that disbursement phase. That disbursement phase can take about a week. In some cases, your bear may go into a manual review, and that's where it will take longer, obviously. Once you receive an email, once your bear completes and is dispersed, you're going to receive an email remittance statement, and this is going to be an email that comes to you and it's going to list a bunch of information about that bear. The important thing to remember is, or to watch for, is to make sure that what you asked for on your bear matches to what they're actually saying and they're going to pay out to you. And the problem that could arise is that, let's say you submitted, a library system submits a bear for $10,000, right? The email remittance statement that you receive will show all that information regarding that bear, but for whatever reason they've got there, it'll say that they're paying $8,000. So you were expecting 10, they're paying 8. That's a partial disbursement. And so what you'll want to do there is contact Client Services Bureau and find out, okay, what was the problem? What was the error? If you can find out what the error is, you can go back to your source documentation, like your invoice or the bear, and fix it and refile. If you will also see on that that email remittance statement, if it says 0 paid out, that's obviously a red flag. That's a problem. And so we just, like I said, bottom line is you want to make sure that you confirm that the bear was fully paid. Okay. All right. If your bear doesn't progress along after a few days, it's probably in a manual review, and that means that someone's actually going through it. When we file bears, and they can hang out there for months. We're obviously dealing with big amounts of funding, big amounts of money. Your run-of-the-mill, average applicant is not likely going to be in a situation where they go through such a lengthy level of review. You can escalate any type of bear review after 60 days. So when you file that bear in the bear legacy filing system, you can count 60 days out. If your bear still hasn't been paid in that period of time, you can first and foremost, email me. Secondly, you'll want to log into EPC and create a customer service ticket and go ahead and escalate that bear. When you do that and you email me, I will also escalate that bear as well. If your bear, and this is what I was mentioning a moment ago, I guess I got ahead of myself. If your bear is partially denied or denied in full, you can in most cases, fix the issue and then refile. If they come back to you and say we're denying this bear because of some compliance issue, right? Then you can appeal the decision to USAC. I think that is my last slide. So what we'll do is we can open it up for questions. If the folks would like to, if you have any questions, we can do that. While I'm talking about that, a few more things to remember. I mentioned earlier the deadline to file a bear is 120 days after the service delivery deadline. So for non-recurring services, that deadline is as late as January 28th. But if you have recurring services, for example, like your managed broadband internal connections or your basic maintenance internal connections, if you have a recurring service agreement with a vendor, the service or the invoice deadline to file a bear is around the end of October. October 28th is generally the day that is due. If you get to that point, and you haven't filed a bear yet for whatever reason, you'll want to file what's known as an invoice deadline extension. We will talk about that in a little more detail in a future webinar. But for funding year 2018-19, the funding year we just completed a month prior, the deadline for that funding year to file bears is, will be approaching here at the end of October. So, for anyone who deals with E-rate, you kind of have to be thinking about two different, and sometimes even three different funding years, right? So for 18-19, funding year 18-19, the deadline for filing a bear will be October 29th or 28th or 29th of 2019 of this year. If you get to that point in time, and I will send out reminder emails, hey, say something essentially like file an invoice deadline extension request. It's an automatic 120-day extension. Okay, let's see. Feel free if you'd like to throw some questions in the chat box, or let's see if we can unmute everyone. Curtis, are we able to unmute everybody?
We can, but that usually causes a feedback.
Oh, okay. I got it. Okay. So we have a few folks on the line. Okay. Well, let's try it and see. Okay. Until we'll have. Okay. All right. So, all right. Looks like everybody's in mute only. Okay. Well, like I said, feel free to throw some questions in that chat box. If not, we can always end early. You guys have the handouts. If you need any other additional information, you guys are more than welcome to contact me anytime. Shoot me an email, give me a call, and I'd be happy to help you however I can. And be sure to look for the newsletters that I send out about once a month. We're going to probably start sending those out a little more frequently to include some deadlines that are coming up, as well as funding commitment information that we'll be pushing out to folks. Okay. I am going to scroll back up to the let's see, up to the slide to this section up here. Okay. Right. So the funding year 2021 is a year away, obviously. But it is important to go ahead and start thinking about the upcoming funding year. So I generally say around July. July to October is a great time to start planning for the next funding year. So funding year 2021. Let's see, pull those up. So if you look over here, July to October is a good time to do the planning, and so that's kind of getting a sense of, okay, what product services do I think I need to have for, come July 1 of 2020? Well, really, it's a year away, a little under a year away, but now's the time to start thinking about those things. We recommend, if you have to do any type of procurement, October to some specific date is going to be the ideal time to do that. October to December is the best time to do procurement. Once we have the funding, the application window, the application window where applicants file that Form 471, we won't know what the specific date is for the funding year 2021 procurement deadline. For 1920, the current funding year, it was February 27th. That was based on a specific application window, which was January 16th to March 27th. I will also mention that the FCC has issued a notice of proposed rulemaking for the Category 2 budget program. What that means is the Category 2 budget program is slated to be either renewed or it will be transitioned back into the 2 and 5 priority 2 and 5 budget program from prior to funding years prior to 2014-15. And so we don't know what the Category 2 program is going to look like. All indication is that the program will be extended permanently, which we're thinking is a good thing. I am working with a series of libraries, school districts, and charter schools to craft comments to the FCC in regards to this proposed rulemaking, and that will be the official comments of the state that we'll be sending up. And so we should have some information. It could be later into September, October before we really have any firm understanding of what the Category 2 program is going to look like in the next funding year. So, as we approach fall, we will, do our best to try and have training, in-person training, more webinars, obviously, to educate and train folks on any changes that might come out of the FCC as it relates to the Category 2 budget program. A couple of things that we're kind of watching that we think are exciting is the potential to move to a district-wide or a library system-wide Category 2 budget. So a school district or a library system will be able to say to use all of their Category 2 funds and allocate them to any school or library branch within their organization. Not they don't have to use those funds at a specific location. So that's a change that we're hoping is adopted. The other changes that we're hoping do come to pass and approved are an increase to the Category 2 budget levels. So currently the formula is $150 per student or $2.30 per square foot for a library system. And so those have increased each year since 2014 or 15-16 based on inflation rates. But the goal and what we're seeing is that the increase from 150 to some other number. So 250 is one that's been thrown out there. It would be very beneficial to schools, and libraries obviously would move from the $2.30 to some other number. And so we'd like to see $5, for example. But we will, like I said, continue to follow that. Just kind of give you some updated information as to how this Category 2 budget program is going to evolve over the next year. And we ask that you just kind of be flexible with us and really consider participating in the program. Okay, seeing no questions, which means I must have done a really good job in explaining how to file invoices. We'll go ahead and cancel or end this webinar. I will have it a recording of this webinar as well as all the handouts in the upcoming newsletter, which I will send out in a few days. Thanks, everyone. Take care.